My name is Layla. I'm 38 years old, and I never thought I'd be standing in my own kitchen being told I wasn't welcome at a celebration happening under my roof. That beautiful Saturday morning, I was preparing a special anniversary breakfast for my son Marcus and his wife Sarah, who'd been living with me for 8 months after their financial struggles hit. I'd overlooked Sarah's controlling nature for my son's happiness, but what happened next changed everything. Before I share what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever felt unwelcome in your own home, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself. The story really began 8 months ago when Marcus lost his job at the tech startup where he'd been working as a software developer. The same week he got laid off, Sarah announced she was pregnant with their first child. It should have been a moment of joy, but I could see the panic in my son's eyes as he calculated bills against an empty bank account. Their apartment lease was ending that month, and with no income and a baby on the way, they couldn't afford to renew. That's when I made the offer that would change our family dynamic forever. I invited them to move into my 4-bedroom house, the one I'd inherited from my late mother 3 years earlier. Sarah's reaction should have been my first warning sign. While Marcus expressed genuine gratitude, nearly breaking down in tears at my kitchen table, Sarah sat stiffly in her chair, her jaw clenched. She kept talking about losing their independence, about how humiliating it would be to move back in with a parent. Marcus reminded her gently that they didn't have many options, and she finally agreed, though her thank you felt forced through gritted teeth. Moving day arrived on a rainy Tuesday. I'd spent the weekend preparing their room, setting up the guest bedroom as a future nursery-making space in the garage for their belongings. Sarah walked through the house that day like a queen surveying a disappointing castle. She commented on the dated kitchen backsplash, suggested the living room needed better flow, and actually asked if I'd considered removing the wall between the dining room and kitchen to create an open concept. This was my mother's house. Every wall held memories, every room echoed with laughter from family gatherings spanning 40 years. But I bit my tongue and smiled, telling myself she was just stressed about the situation. The first week I tried to establish some basic house rules. Nothing unreasonable, just simple things like cleaning up after cooking, keeping the common areas tidy, and letting me know if they'd have guests over. Sarah immediately pushed back on every single one. She said having to tell me about guests made her feel like a teenager, that she was a married woman and shouldn't need permission to have friends over. Marcus was caught in the middle from day one. I'd catch him in the hallway looking exhausted, trying to explain to Sarah that these were reasonable requests while she accused him of taking my side over hers. He'd come to me later asking me to be patient, promising things would get better once Sarah adjusted. I genuinely tried to bond with Sarah. I invited her on shopping trips to buy nursery items, excited to prepare for my first grandchild. She would agree, then cancel at the last minute with vague excuses about morning sickness or fatigue. I suggested lunch dates at her favorite restaurants, offering to pay only to receive texts that she'd forgotten and already eaten. One evening, I was walking past their room when I heard Sarah on the phone with her friend Madison. She was complaining about living in a museum, how nothing in the house could be touched or changed, how I was always watching and judging. She called me overbearing and said she couldn't wait to get out of this prison. Each word felt like a small knife twisting in my chest. Despite the hurt, I continued trying. When Sarah reached her 7th month, I threw her a beautiful baby shower in my backyard. I spent weeks planning it, hand-making decorations in soft yellows and greens, preparing all the food myself, inviting all her friends and family. The shower was lovely, guests complimented everything, and Sarah smiled and laughed throughout the afternoon. Later, I overheard her telling her mother Patricia that the shower was nice but not what she would have chosen. The decorations were too traditional. The games were outdated, and couldn't I have hired a proper caterer instead of making my homemade dishes? Patricia agreed, adding that at least I'd tried, bless my heart. Meanwhile, my financial support went far beyond just housing. I bought all the groceries, paid the increased utilities, covered Sarah's prenatal vitamins when they mentioned the cost was straining their savings. When Marcus's car needed new brakes, I paid for those too. When Sarah craved specific organic foods from the expensive market across town, I added them to my shopping list without complaint. Marcus found a new job after 3 months, a good position with better pay than his previous one. But there was no talk of moving out. Instead, Sarah started referring to different rooms as theirs. The living room became their family room. The kitchen was their kitchen. She'd move my things, reorganize cupboards, and rearrange furniture without asking. 6 months in, she started making plans for the backyard, talking about removing my mother's rose garden to put in a modern patio set and fire pit. When I gently reminded her that this was my house, she looked hurt and said she was just trying to contribute to making it feel more like home for everyone. Marcus later asked me to consider some of Sarah's ideas, saying it would help her feel more settled. The pattern was clear. Sarah's expectations increased daily, while her gratitude decreased at the same rate. She expected meals to be ready when she was hungry, laundry to magically clean itself, and the house to be quiet when she wanted to nap. But if I vacuumed during her waking hours, I was being passive-aggressive about her not helping with housework. 3 weeks before their second anniversary, Sarah started mentioning elaborate party plans. She was sitting at my dining room table with her laptop scrolling through Pinterest boards of anniversary party ideas. She spoke excitedly about hiring a caterer for a 5-course meal, bringing in a professional photographer to document the evening, and possibly even hiring a small acoustic band for live music. She envisioned hosting 25 guests in my house. Her entire family would come from 2 states away, along with her college roommates, work friends, and some couples they'd met at prenatal classes. The dining room would be transformed with silk draping, the living room would become a cocktail lounge, and the backyard would have string lights creating an enchanted garden atmosphere. Naturally, I assumed I'd be helping host this celebration in my own home. After all, I'd been part of every major event in Marcus's life since the day he was born. I offered to help with planning, suggesting some local vendors I knew who gave good rates. Sarah barely looked up from her laptop, saying her friend Madison was handling everything as her anniversary gift to them. Madison started coming over daily, turning my dining room into party planning central. Fabric samples covered my grandmother's mahogany table. Invitation samples were scattered across every surface, and they'd spend hours discussing minute details while I tried to go about my daily routine in my own house. Expensive decorations began arriving daily. Packages from specialty party stores, custom signage, imported flowers that needed specific refrigeration temperatures. All delivered to my address, all creating chaos in my organized home. Sarah asked me to move my late mother's china collection to the basement to make room for the party supplies. These were pieces my mother had collected over 40 years each with a story, but Sarah needed the cabinet space for rental dishes that matched her color scheme. During one planning session, I caught a glimpse of the guest list on Madison's tablet. I scanned it quickly, seeing names I recognized, family members I'd met at their wedding, but something was off. I looked again more carefully. My name wasn't on the list. Surely that was an oversight. I was about to mention it when Sarah quickly closed the tablet, saying they were still finalizing details. Marcus had been notably absent during most of the planning. He'd arrive home from work and immediately disappear into their room, or suddenly remember errands he needed to run. When I tried to ask him about the anniversary arrangements, he'd change the subject, or mumble something about Sarah handling everything. Sarah's mother, Patricia, arrived a week early to help with preparations. Help is a generous term for what she actually did. Patricia walked through my house making notes about everything that needed to be improved before the party. The walls needed touching up, the carpets should be professionally cleaned. Had I considered replacing those old-fashioned curtains in the living room, together Sarah and Patricia completely transformed my home. My family photos were removed from walls and tucked into closets. Furniture I'd carefully chosen was rearranged or moved to the garage. They brought in rental furniture that better suited the aesthetic Sarah wanted. My house became unrecognizable, like a staged property waiting for buyers rather than a lived-in home. The florist arrived for a consultation, and they gathered in my living room to discuss arrangements. When I went to join them with a tray of coffee and cookies, I'd made Sarah actually gestured for me to just leave the tray and go. I stood in my own kitchen, excluded from a meeting happening 10 feet away, feeling like hired help rather than the homeowner. The menu discussion happened over dinner one night. Sarah went through each course in detail, mentioning specific dietary restrictions and preferences. Gluten-free options for her cousin, vegan alternatives for Marcus's coworker, keto-friendly sides for her fitness friends. Every restriction seemed specifically designed to exclude dishes I was known for making. When I offered to contribute my famous lasagna, a dish Marcus had requested every birthday since he was 12, Sarah's response was sharp and immediate. "We have it covered," she said, returning to her list without even acknowledging my offer. 2 days later, I was taking laundry from the office when I noticed something on the printer. It was a draft of the invitation. Beautiful cream cardstock with gold embossing, elegant script, announcing that Sarah and Marcus invited guests to celebrate their second anniversary of marriage. No mention of where the party was hosted, no acknowledgement that it was my home, certainly no recognition of my existence. The photographer visited to scout the house, and I heard Sarah directing him through different rooms. She pointed out the best angles, specifically noting which areas to avoid, because they looked outdated. She actually used the word outdated while standing in the room where my mother had hosted 50 years of Christmas dinners. Despite my growing unease, I kept telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe they wanted to feel independent even while living under my roof. Maybe this was their way of maintaining some dignity in their situation. I could understand that. I could be supportive. I pushed down the hurt and continued making excuses for behavior that deep down I knew was inexcusable. Thursday afternoon. 3 days before the anniversary party, I was folding laundry in the basement when I heard Sarah and Madison finalizing the timeline for Saturday. Their voices carried clearly through the old heating vents, and what I heard stopped me cold. Madison was confirming the schedule. Caterers would arrive at 4 p.m. for set-up guests at 6, and they'd need the house empty by 4 for preparations. Then Sarah said the words that changed everything. "We'll need Layla out by 4 p.m. for setup. Make sure she understands she needs to be completely gone." I stood frozen, holding one of Marcus's shirts, trying to process what I just heard. Surely I'd misunderstood. I walked upstairs, my heart pounding, and entered the dining room where they were sitting with their planning binders spread across the table. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Did I just hear correctly that I need to leave my house on Saturday?" Sarah looked up casually, as if we were discussing the weather. "Oh, Layla," she said with that fake sweetness she'd perfected. "We figured you had plans that evening. You know, give us some space for our special day. Plans to leave my own house." The words came out harder than I intended. Sarah's expression shifted to one of practiced patience, like she was dealing with a difficult child. "It's just that we want an intimate celebration with our generation. Our friends would feel more comfortable, more relaxed if it was just us." 25 people is intimate, I asked, feeling heat rising in my chest. That's when Marcus walked in, and I could tell immediately that he knew. He knew about this plan and had said nothing. He couldn't meet my eyes, instead focusing on a spot somewhere over my shoulder. "Mom," he said quietly, and I heard the guilt in his voice. "Maybe it would be better if you weren't here. Just for the party. You understand, right? Those words. From my son. The baby I'd raised alone after his father left when Marcus was 2. The child I'd worked 3 jobs to support going without, so he could have everything he needed. The young man I'd put through college, celebrated with at graduation, stood beside at his wedding. That son was now telling me I wasn't welcome in the house I'd opened to him in his time of need." Sarah jumped in, her tone condescending. "You understand, right? You've been so generous already. This is just one little thing we're asking. One little thing. Being exiled from my own home was one little thing. Where exactly am I supposed to go?" I asked, looking directly at Marcus, who was still avoiding my gaze. Sarah had an answer ready. "Maybe visit your sister Emma. She lives an hour away. Or treat yourself to a nice hotel downtown. Make a spa weekend of it. A hotel." They wanted me to pay for a hotel room so they could party in my house. The house my mother left me. The house where I'd grieved her loss. The house I'd opened to them without hesitation when they were desperate. "Marcus," I said, and he finally looked at me. "Is this really what you want?" He glanced at Sarah, then back to the floor. It's just one night, Mom. Sarah's put so much work into planning this. Patricia chose that moment to enter from the kitchen where she'd obviously been listening. You know, Layla, she said in her most patronizing tone, boundaries are so important for young couples. They need to establish their own traditions, their own space, even when they're temporarily staying with family. Temporarily. 8 months of free housing, food, utilities, and support with no end in sight was temporary. I looked around the room at these people who had taken over my home, my life, my peace. Sarah sat there with her hand on her pregnant belly, a gesture I'd noticed she used whenever she wanted to remind everyone of her condition. Madison was pretending to study her planning binder, but obviously enjoying the drama. Patricia stood with her arms crossed, ready to defend her daughter against any pushback. And Marcus, my son, stood there letting it happen. I need some time to think about this, I said quietly. Sarah's response was immediate and dismissive. Well, don't think too long. The invitations already went out. It would be awkward to change things now, as if my comfort in my own home was less important than avoiding awkwardness with her guests. I walked to my bedroom, closing the door behind me with a soft click when I wanted to slam it. My hands were shaking as I sat on my bed, the bed my parents had shared for 30 years before Dad passed. I looked at their wedding photo on my nightstand, wondering what they would think of this situation. 20 years of single motherhood flashed through my mind. The nights I'd stayed up with Marcus when he was sick, missing work and losing pay, but never complaining. The birthday parties I'd organized on a shoestring budget, making homemade decorations and cakes because that's all I could afford. The times I'd gone without new clothes, so he could have the right shoes for basketball, the proper calculator for advanced math, the laptop for college. I remembered parent-teacher conferences where teachers praised what a good job I'd done raising him alone. Soccer games where I was both mother and father, cheering from the sidelines. Graduation day when he'd thanked me in his speech, calling me his hero, making me cry in front of hundreds of people. All of that, every sacrifice, every difficult choice, every moment of putting him first, had led to this moment. Being told I wasn't welcome at a celebration in the house I'd worked my whole life to maintain. But it wasn't just about the party. It was about the pattern I'd been ignoring for 8 months. The gradual erosion of my position in my own home. The daily disrespect disguised as hormones or stress. The taking and taking and taking while giving nothing back, not even basic courtesy. I thought about my mother, a strong woman who'd taught me to stand up for myself. She'd be appalled at how I'd let this situation develop. She'd remind me that helping family doesn't mean becoming a doormat. That love doesn't require accepting disrespect. That sometimes the best thing you can do for people is to stop enabling their bad behavior. The decision crystallized in that moment. If they wanted me out of my house, then I'd give them exactly what they were asking for. But not in the way they expected. Friday morning arrived with unusual clarity. I woke at 5 a.m., made my coffee, and sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and my laptop. If they wanted me out, they'd need to be out too. But I was going to do this right. First, I called my friend Janet, who practiced family law. I explained the situation, and she confirmed what I already suspected. As the homeowner with no rental agreement, I had every right to ask them to leave. The standard notice period would be 30 days, but since there was no lease and they weren't paying rent, I had more flexibility. She advised me to document everything and suggested I was being more than generous by giving them the weekend. This wasn't about legality, though. This was about respect, boundaries, and the moment when helping becomes enabling. Sarah left early for her mother's house to finalize party preparations. Marcus was at work. I had the house to myself for what I knew would be an emotional but necessary task. I started in the nursery they'd set up in my guest room. Every item in that room had a story. The crib I'd bought and assembled myself while Sarah supervised from a chair, declaring my efforts adequate. The changing table I'd found at an estate sale and refinished. The rocking chair that had been my mother's, which Sarah had reluctantly accepted after suggesting multiple times that they needed something more modern. Each item was carefully wrapped and boxed. The tiny clothes I'd washed and folded with such love, imagining my grandchild wearing them. The stuffed animals I'd collected, each chosen specifically because it reminded me of something from Marcus's childhood. The hand-knitted blankets my friend at work had made when she heard I was going to be a grandmother. Moving to their bedroom felt more invasive but necessary. Sarah's clothing took up 3/4 of the closet and had overflowed into the guest room closet as well. Designer pieces mixed with maternity wear shoes, I'd never seen her wear handbags still with tags on them. I folded everything properly, treating her belongings with more respect than she'd shown mine. Marcus's things were easier to pack. His gaming setup that I'd helped him upgrade for his birthday. His collection of vintage band t-shirts that he'd worn since high school. The watch I'd given him for his college graduation left carelessly on the dresser. Their wedding photos came off the walls, each one a reminder of the hope I'd had that day. Sarah had looked beautiful, Marcus handsome and happy. I'd given a speech about welcoming Sarah to our family, about the joy of gaining a daughter. The bitter irony of those words now made my chest tight. The anniversary gifts I'd already purchased sat in my closet. A beautiful crystal picture frame for their wedding photo, and a gift certificate for the expensive restaurant where they'd had their first date. I set these aside to return later, the receipts still in the bag. As I worked, I made an inventory of everything I was packing. Not because I needed the documentation, but because I wanted them to see itemized just how much of their life in my home had been subsidized by my generosity. The physical packing took 6 hours. The emotional toll was harder to measure. Each box represented a hope dashed a boundary, crossed a kindness taken for granted. By the time I finished, their belongings were neatly organized in labeled boxes in the garage. Then came the task of reclaiming my space. My mother's photos went back on the walls. The furniture returned to its original positions. The china came back up from the basement, each piece unwrapped and placed carefully in its proper spot. The house slowly transformed back into my home. I typed the letter on my computer, printing it on the good stationery my mother had always insisted on keeping for important correspondence. Dear Marcus and Sarah, the letter began. After much reflection on yesterday's conversation, I've come to a decision. You've made it clear that my presence in my own home is unwanted and inconvenient for your celebration. I understand you want space and independence. I'm prepared to give you exactly that. I've packed your belongings carefully and arranged for a storage unit on Maple Street, paid for through the end of next month. You'll need to be out of the house by Sunday evening. This will give you time to make arrangements for your anniversary celebration at an alternate location and find new housing that better suits your needs for independence and privacy. Over the past 8 months, I've provided housing, food, utilities, and various other support totaling approximately $32,000. I'm not asking for repayment. Consider it my gift to help you start your lives together. However, I am asking for something in return: respect for me as a person and recognition of the boundaries that should exist even between family members. I wish you both the best as you begin this new chapter of independence you've been craving. The baby is welcome to visit once you've established your new home, and we can discuss appropriate boundaries for our relationship moving forward. I printed 2 copies, one for them and one for my records. The storage unit key was placed in an envelope with the letter. Friday afternoon was spent returning the anniversary party rentals that had been delivered to my house. The rental company was understanding about the cancellation, though I did lose the deposit. I also called the caterer, directly explaining there had been a change of venue and they should contact Sarah for the new address. By evening, my house was mine again. The chaos of party supplies was gone. The transformation Sarah and Patricia had orchestrated was reversed. I stood in my living room looking at my family photos back in their rightful places and felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. I knew the storm was coming. I knew that when Sarah and Marcus returned there would be anger, accusations, perhaps even threats. But I also knew that this was necessary. Not just for me, but for them. They needed to understand that marriage meant building a life together, not taking over someone else's life. The irony wasn't lost on me that they wanted independence while being completely dependent. They wanted privacy while invading my space. They wanted respect while showing none. These contradictions had become unsustainable, and it was time for reality to provide the lesson that my enabling hadn't allowed. Friday evening at 6:30, I heard Sarah's car pull into the driveway. She was on the phone, her voice carrying through the windows, laughing about tomorrow's party and how perfect everything would be. The front door opened, and for a moment there was normal household noise, keys dropping on the entry table, shoes being kicked off. Then silence. Complete absolute silence. What happened to everything? Sarah's shriek pierced through the house. I heard rapid footsteps, doors opening and closing, Marcus's confused voice joining Sarah's increasingly hysterical one. They found the boxes in the garage first, then the letter on the kitchen counter where I'd left it prominently displayed. She can't do this. Sarah's voice had reached a pitch I'd never heard before. This is illegal. She can't just throw us out. My phone rang. Marcus. I let it ring twice before answering, keeping my voice steady and calm. Mom, what is this? His voice was shaking, a mixture of confusion and anger. It's exactly what the letter says, Marcus. You wanted me out of the house for your anniversary. I'm giving you the independence you've been craving. Sarah grabbed the phone from him. This is illegal. This is elder abuse. You can't evict us without proper notice. We have rights. I actually laughed at that. Elder abuse. I'm 38, Sarah. And you're right about tenant rights, except you're not tenants. You're guests who've overstayed their welcome. But don't worry. I've consulted with a lawyer. Everything I'm doing is perfectly legal. You're ruining everything, she screamed. The party is tomorrow. What are we supposed to tell people? Perhaps the truth, that you excluded the homeowner from a party in her own house. There was shuffling and Marcus's voice returned. Mom, please. Think about what you're doing. The anniversary party, all the deposits Sarah paid. With my credit card, I interrupted. Which I've been paying off along with everything else. You're being petty and vindictive, he said, and those words hurt more than anything else. No, Marcus. I'm being a mother who's finally stopping the enabling. You're 32 years old, married, about to be a father. It's time you acted like it. What about the baby? Sarah had grabbed the phone again. You're throwing out your pregnant daughter-in-law. What kind of grandmother does that? The kind who refuses to be disrespected in her own home. Patricia has a house. You can stay with her. Her house is too small, Sarah protested. Funny how space suddenly matters when it's not free, I replied. The calls continued for the next hour. Marcus, Sarah, then Patricia, then Sarah's friend Madison. Each one tried a different approach. Marcus played the guilt card, reminding me of promises I'd made to always be there for him. Sarah alternated between rage and tears, threatening legal action one moment and playing the pregnancy card the next. Patricia lectured me about family values while conveniently ignoring how her daughter had treated me. Madison accused me of ruining their special day, apparently unaware that I hadn't even been invited to it. Between calls, I watched through my window as Sarah posted on social media. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with notifications. She'd painted herself as the victim of a cruel mother-in-law who'd thrown out a pregnant woman without warning or cause. But social media is a double-edged sword. People started asking questions. Why were you living there in the first place? Why would she suddenly kick you out? What exactly happened? When someone directly asked if I'd been invited to the anniversary party, Sarah's non-answer spoke volumes. The tide of comments began to shift. Some of Marcus's friends who knew me from his childhood expressed surprise. Neighbors who'd witnessed the situation over the months added their perspectives. My sister Emma called after seeing the posts. Finally, she said without preamble, I've been waiting 8 months for you to stop being a doormat. Do you need me to come over? I assured her I was fine, but her anger on my behalf was validating. She'd watched me sacrifice everything for Marcus, celebrated his successes with me, comforted me through the challenges. She'd also noticed how Sarah had slowly pushed me to the margins of my son's life. Around 9 p.m., there was a knock on my bedroom door. I found Marcus standing in the hallway looking like the lost little boy who used to come to me with scraped knees and broken toys. Mom, can we talk without Sarah? I let him in and he sat on the edge of my bed, the same spot where I'd read him bedtime stories 25 years ago. I messed up, he said quietly. I know I did. Sarah. She has such strong opinions, and it's easier to go along with them than fight. That's not a marriage, Marcus. That's capitulation. He nodded, running his hands through his hair. The party guests are starting to call confused about tomorrow. Some saw Sarah's posts and are taking your side. Her cousin just texted that excluding you from the party was trashy. I remained silent, letting him process. She's been like this our whole marriage, he admitted. But it got worse when we moved in here. She saw it as her chance to have the house she wanted without paying for it. She started planning renovations. Did you know that? She had an architect friend draw up plans to completely redo the kitchen and knock down the dining room wall. I didn't know that, but I wasn't surprised. I should have stood up to her. Should have stood up for you. His voice broke slightly. You're my mom. You've done everything for me, and I let her treat you like an inconvenience in your own home. Yes, you did. He flinched at my blunt response, but nodded. Can you forgive me? Forgiveness isn't the issue right now, Marcus. The issue is what happens next. You have a wife and a baby on the way. You need to decide what kind of husband and father you're going to be. Are you going to let Sarah make all the decisions? Are you going to teach your child that it's okay to disrespect family who help you? He was quiet for a long moment. She wants to go to a hotel tonight and make you pay for it. Of course she does. I'm not going to let her, he said, straightening up. We'll go to her mother's. That's a start. Mom the baby. When it comes, you'll still want to be a grandmother, right? I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He seemed smaller somehow, diminished by months of letting his wife control everything. That depends entirely on you and Sarah. I'll always love my grandchild, but I won't accept disrespect to have a relationship. Those days are over. He stood to leave, then turned back. The anniversary party is canceled. Sarah's telling people you sabotaged it. No, I corrected him. Sarah sabotaged it the moment she decided I wasn't welcome at a celebration in my own home. I just declined to be a victim. After he left, I sat in my quiet house feeling the weight of the day settling over me. Tomorrow would bring more drama, more accusations, more attempts at manipulation. But tonight, for the first time in 8 months, I felt like myself again. Strong, independent, worthy of respect. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was one of Sarah's friends from the baby shower. Heard what happened? Good for you. She's been bragging for months about living rent-free and redecorating your house. We all thought it was messed up. So everyone had seen it except me. Or maybe I'd seen it but chosen to ignore it, hoping things would improve, hoping my son would find his backbone, hoping Sarah would develop some gratitude. Hope, I realized, could sometimes be just another word for denial. Saturday morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching the mood in the house. Sarah and Marcus were still there despite my deadline. I found them in the kitchen when I came down for coffee. Sarah on the phone with various vendors trying to salvage something of the party, Marcus staring at his laptop screen. Some guests are still coming, Sarah announced as if I should care. We're going to have it at my mother's. Patricia's house was a modest 2-bedroom ranch, barely large enough for the 5 guests she usually hosted at holidays, let alone 25 people expecting an elaborate anniversary celebration. Good luck with that, I said, pouring my coffee. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Sarah accused. Destroying our special day. I set down my mug and looked at her directly. Sarah, you destroyed your special day the moment you decided to exclude me from an event in my home. You've been destroying relationships since you moved in, criticizing everything, taking everything, appreciating nothing. This is simply the consequence of your choices. Sarah's response was to burst into tears, but I'd seen this performance before. The tears that appeared whenever she was held accountable, that disappeared the moment she got her way. Marcus finally looked up from his laptop. Mom's right, he said quietly, and both Sarah and I turned to stare at him. We've been taking advantage. I've been taking advantage. This is wake-up call we needed. Sarah's tears stopped immediately. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to pack our things and go to your mother's. Then we need to find our own place and start acting like adults. Sarah's face went through several expressions before settling on rage. Your mother has manipulated you. This is exactly what she wanted to break us up. No one's breaking up, Marcus said, his voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. But things are going to change. We're going to change. We're about to be parents, Sarah. What kind of example would we be setting, teaching our child to take advantage of family? The argument that followed was epic. Sarah accused Marcus of betrayal, weakness, being a mama's boy. Marcus finally fought back. He listed every instance of disrespect Sarah had shown me, every boundary she'd crossed, every kindness she'd dismissed. It was brutal to witness, but necessary. By noon, the canceled party had become the talk of our social circle. Guests were confused, some angry about the last-minute cancellation, others sympathetic after learning the full story. Sarah's carefully curated image as the perfect wife was crumbling with each revealed detail. Sarah's friend Ashley arrived to help with packing, but after hearing both sides, she turned to Sarah with disappointment. You excluded his mother from a party in her own house after living there free for 8 months. Girl, that's cold. Patricia arrived next, ready to defend her daughter, but even she seemed subdued when faced with the packed boxes and the reality of what had transpired. She tried once more to guilt me, mentioning the baby, the stress on Sarah, the importance of family support. Family support goes both ways, Patricia. Respect goes both ways. Your daughter never learned that lesson. Maybe now she will. The moving process was chaotic. Sarah complained about how things were packed despite my careful handling of everything. She accused me of stealing items that were hers, though everything she pointed to had been purchased by me. The entitlement was staggering, even in defeat. Marcus loaded boxes into their cars and the small rental truck he'd hastily arranged. With each trip to the garage, he looked more embarrassed, more aware of how much they'd accumulated while contributing nothing. The anniversary dinner they'd planned became Chinese takeout, eaten on Patricia's back porch, the 5-course catered meal canceled, deposits lost. The photographer arrived at Patricia's house confused about the venue change, and left after taking a few awkward shots of the couple who were barely speaking to each other. Sarah made one last attempt at manipulation that evening, texting me a photo of herself looking distressed, hand on her baby bump, with the message, I hope you're happy. Your grandchild's first home is gone because of your selfishness. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that hadn't already been said. The truth was clear to anyone willing to see it. Sunday morning, they were officially gone. The house felt different, lighter, like it could breathe again. I spent the day deep cleaning, not because the house was dirty, but because I needed the ritual of reclaiming each room completely. Neighbors stopped by throughout the day. Mrs. Henderson from next door brought cookies and a hug. About time you stood up for yourself, she said. We've all been watching that girl walk all over you. Even the mailman who'd witnessed Sarah's complaints about packages and mail delivery for months mentioned he was glad to see my car in the driveway instead of Sarah's. Marcus called Sunday evening from Patricia's house. The background noise suggested ongoing tension. He spoke quietly, probably hiding in a bathroom or garage for privacy. We're looking at apartments tomorrow, he said. Found a few we can afford with my salary. That's good, Marcus. Independence is important for a marriage. Mom, I need you to know something. What you did, it was right. It was necessary. I'm angry, hurt, embarrassed, but underneath all that, I know you did the right thing. Thank you for saying that. Sarah's pregnant and hormonal, and dealing with a lot. But that's not an excuse for how she treated you, how we treated you. I'm going to get us into counseling. We need help. That's a mature decision. When the baby comes, will you be there? At the hospital. Let's take things one step at a time, Marcus. Rebuild our relationship, first establish proper boundaries, then we'll discuss the baby. He was quiet for a moment. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry I forgot to show it. I love you too, son. Always have, always will. But love without respect isn't healthy for anyone. After we hung up, I sat in my reclaimed living room looking at the family photos back on the walls. My mother smiled from her wedding portrait, and I could almost hear her voice. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter. One where boundaries existed, respect was required, and my generosity came with conditions. It had taken 38 years, but I'd finally learned that being kind didn't mean being a doormat, and helping family didn't mean sacrificing yourself. The second anniversary party that never happened would become a turning point, the moment when everyone learned that Layla had limits, and crossing them came with consequences. The first week after they left was a mixture of profound relief and unexpected sadness. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been for 8 months, peaceful, but also empty. I found myself automatically buying groceries for 3 people, then remembering I was alone. The nursery stood empty, a reminder of dreams deferred and relationships fractured. I started therapy the following Wednesday. Dr. Jennifer Martinez came, highly recommended, specializing in family dynamics and boundary setting. Our first session was emotional, as I unpacked not just the recent situation, but years of patterns that had led to it. "You've been conditioned to equate love with sacrifice," she observed. "When did you learn that your needs were less important than everyone else's?" We traced it back to my childhood. Growing up with parents who praised selflessness above all else, then into my marriage, where I'd given everything to make it work, only to be left alone with a toddler. Single motherhood had reinforced the pattern, putting Marcus's needs first, becoming not just habit, but identity. Marcus called twice that week, both times when Sarah wasn't around. They'd found a small 2-bedroom apartment, nothing fancy but clean and in a safe neighborhood. He'd asked his boss for overtime opportunities to cover the expenses. Reality was hitting hard. "Sarah and I are fighting constantly," he admitted during the second call. "She blames me for not standing up to you, but also for standing up to her. Nothing I do is right." "That's something for your marriage counselor to help you work through," I said, maintaining the boundary I'd set about not being their mediator. "She wants to come talk to you. To apologize. Her mother's making her. Only if she actually means it, Marcus. I won't sit through a performance." The apology attempt came that Saturday. Sarah arrived alone, looking smaller somehow, without her usual confidence. Pregnancy was showing more now, and for the first time she looked vulnerable. "I'm sorry," she started, then stopped. Her prepared speech seemed to stick in her throat. "I'm not good at this. At admitting I'm wrong. Take your time." She sat on my couch, the same spot where 8 months ago I'd offered them sanctuary. I grew up always competing with my sisters. My mother compared us constantly. Who got better grades? Who was prettier? Who married better? When I married Marcus, I won in her eyes. But then we needed help, and suddenly I was the daughter who couldn't make it on her own. That explains some things, but it doesn't excuse them. No, it doesn't. She looked at her hands. I was so focused on maintaining an image that I forgot about maintaining relationships. I treated your house like a stage for the life I wanted people to think I had. I treated you like an obstacle to that image. And Marcus, Sarah's laugh was bitter. I've been controlling him since our first date. He was so eager to please, so different from the aggressive guys I'd dated before. I thought that made him weak. I'm only now realizing it made him kind. Kindness isn't weakness, Sarah, though it can be exploited by those who see it that way. She flinched but nodded. My mother says I'm just like my grandmother. Never satisfied, always critical, pushing everyone away. Then wondering why I'm not happy. Patterns can be broken, Sarah. But it takes work. Real work, not just words. The marriage counselor says the same thing. She looked up at me then. I am sorry, Layla. Not because my mother made me come here, not because I want something from you. I'm sorry because I hurt someone who only tried to help me. I'm sorry because I taught Marcus to disrespect the person who loves him most. I'm sorry because my child deserves better than the example I've been setting. It was the first genuine moment we'd shared in 8 months. I saw her then, really saw her. A scared young woman about to become a mother, carrying her own baggage and insecurities, making mistakes that stemmed from pain rather than malice. I appreciate your apology, Sarah, and I hope you do the work to change these patterns. For your sake, for Marcus, and especially for the baby. Will you be part of the baby's life? She asked, tears finally falling. That depends on whether the changes you're making are real and lasting. I won't expose myself to disrespect again, not even for a grandchild. But if you both do the work, if you establish and maintain healthy boundaries, then yes, I want to be a grandmother. She left with homework from me, books on boundaries and respect, resources for new parents that emphasized partnership over control. It was a start, nothing more, but it was genuine. 2 months passed. Marcus and Sarah struggled in their apartment, learning what actual independence meant. No one to buy groceries when money ran short, no one to clean up after them, no one to blame when things went wrong. The reality was harsh, but necessary. Marcus started standing up to Sarah, more not aggressively, but firmly. He told me about one fight where Sarah wanted to buy an expensive stroller they couldn't afford. Old Marcus would have figured out how to get the money, probably asking me. New Marcus showed her their budget and suggested they check consignment shops. She was furious at first, he said, but then she actually listened. We found a great stroller secondhand, and she even seemed proud of the bargain. Small victories, but important ones. The baby arrived 3 weeks early, a little girl they named Emma after my sister, who'd been my rock through everything. The call came at 2 a.m, Marcus's voice shaky with excitement and fear. "Mom, she's here. She's perfect. Will you come?" I drove to the hospital through empty streets, my heart pounding with a mixture of joy and apprehension. This was the test of all the work we'd done, the boundaries we'd established, the changes they'd promised. Sarah was exhausted but glowing when I entered the room. She actually reached for my hand. "Thank you for coming. I was afraid you wouldn't." I held my granddaughter for the first time, this tiny, perfect person who represented both an ending and a beginning. Emma's birth marked the close of one chapter and the opening of another one built on healthier foundations. Marcus and Sarah's apartment was too small for a nursery, but they made it work. I visited weekly, bringing dinner and helping where asked, but always leaving when it was time. Boundaries maintained on both sides. 6 months after Emma's birth, they invited me to their 3rd anniversary dinner. A simple celebration at a modest restaurant, just the 4 of us. Sarah had made the reservation in my name as a gesture of respect. During dinner, she pulled out a card. Inside, she'd written, "To the woman who taught us what family really means. Not people who take advantage, but people who respect and support each other. Thank you for the hardest lesson and the greatest gift." Marcus added his own note. "Mom, you gave us tough love when we needed it most. We're better people and better parents because you refused to enable our worst selves." The road to rebuilding hadn't been smooth. There were setbacks, moments of tension, times when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But slowly, carefully, we built something new. Not perfect, but honest. Not without conflict, but with tools to resolve it. A year after that explosive anniversary weekend, Sarah called me with news. She'd gotten a promotion at work, one that came with a salary that would let them move to a bigger apartment. But first she wanted my advice on budgeting and saving. I'm trying not to be the old Sarah, who would have immediately spent money we didn't have on things we didn't need, she said. "Will you help me figure this out?" It was a simple request, but it represented so much growth. The woman who'd once resented any suggestion now actively sought guidance. Marcus had grown too. He'd learned to balance being a good husband with being a good son, supporting his wife, while also maintaining his own boundaries. He'd found his voice, the one that had been silenced by convenience and conflict avoidance. During one visit, I watched them navigate a disagreement about Emma's bedtime routine. Instead of Sarah dictating and Marcus acquiescing, they discussed it. They compromised. They acted like partners. "This is what I wanted for you," I told Marcus later. "Not a marriage where one person controls everything, but a partnership where both voices matter." I know, Mom. It took almost losing everything to understand that. My sister Emma, the one who'd supported my decision from the beginning, came for Thanksgiving that year. She watched the family dynamics with sharp eyes, pulling me aside, while Sarah and Marcus prepared dinner in my kitchen, working together smoothly. "They've really changed," she observed. "They have. It wasn't easy for any of us, but they did the work." "And have you changed?" I considered the question. Yes. I've learned that helping doesn't mean enabling. that love doesn't require accepting disrespect, that boundaries aren't walls, they're guidelines for healthy relationships. The therapy had helped me understand my own patterns, why I'd allowed the situation to deteriorate so badly before taking action. Dr. Martinez and I worked through decades of programming that told me a good mother sacrifices everything, a good person never says no, a loving family doesn't have boundaries. You've redefined what love looks like in your family, she said during our final session. That's generational change. Emma will grow up seeing healthy boundaries modeled. That's a gift that will impact generations. The anniversary that never happened became a family legend of sorts. Marcus would occasionally joke about the most expensive Chinese takeout in history. Sarah would reference it when talking to friends about the importance of respecting boundaries. Even little Emma, as she grew, would hear age-appropriate versions of how Grandma taught Mommy and Daddy about respect. 3 years later, when Emma was old enough to understand, Sarah sat her down for a conversation I overheard during a visit. Grandma's house is Grandma's house, she explained. We respect her things and her rules when we visit, just like people respect our rules in our home. But why, Emma asked with the curiosity of a 3-year-old. Because that's how we show love, sweetheart. By respecting people's boundaries and being grateful for their kindness. It was a simple lesson, but one that had taken her parents' painful experience to learn. The support group I'd started for parents dealing with boundary issues had grown to 15 regular members. We met monthly in the community center, sharing stories and strategies. I'd become something of an expert on the topic, even speaking at a local parenting conference about the difference between helping and enabling. One woman in the group, dealing with a similar situation with her daughter, asked how I'd found the courage to pack their bags that day. It wasn't courage, I told her. It was exhaustion. I was exhausted from being disrespected, from being taken for granted, from being erased in my own home. Sometimes the breaking point is actually a breakthrough point. Marcus and Sarah eventually bought a small house of their own 20 minutes from mine. The housewarming party was everything their anniversary party should have been: inclusive, warm, respectful. I stood in their backyard watching Emma play, seeing Marcus and Sarah work as a team to host their guests, and felt a satisfaction deeper than any sacrifice had ever brought. Patricia approached me during the party. She'd been notably quiet since the events of 3 years ago, our relationship cordial but distant. I owe you an apology too, she said quietly. I enabled Sarah's behavior her whole life, made excuses for it. You did what I should have done years ago. We all do what we think is best at the time, I replied. The important thing is learning and growing. You gave them something I never could, she continued. Consequences. Real consequences that forced real change. As the sun set on the housewarming party, I prepared to leave. Sarah hugged me, genuine warmth in the gesture. Marcus walked me to my car while Emma waved from Sarah's arms. Thank you, Mom, he said. For everything. For the tough love most of all. I drove home to my peaceful house, my sanctuary, that I'd almost lost to misplaced generosity and ignored boundaries. The family photos on the walls now included new additions, pictures of Emma, of the 3 of us, at her first birthday of Marcus and Sarah's wedding anniversary. The third one, where I'd been not just included but honored. The journey from that painful second anniversary weekend to this moment of harmony had been difficult but necessary. Every tear, every argument, every moment of doubt had been worth it to arrive at this place of mutual respect and genuine love. As I settled into my quiet evening, I thought about the letter I'd written that transformative Friday. The words that had changed everything. I am asking for something in return: respect for me as a person and recognition of the boundaries that should exist even between family members. That request, simple but revolutionary in our family dynamic, had been the catalyst for genuine change. Not surface change, not temporary modification of behavior, but deep, lasting transformation. The second wedding anniversary party that never happened had become the most important celebration that never was. Because in its cancellation and the chaos and conflict that followed, we'd found something more valuable than any party could provide. We'd found respect, boundaries, and a love that could withstand truth. My name is Layla. I'm now 41 years old, and I'm no longer standing in a kitchen where I'm unwelcome. I'm standing in my own space, respected, valued, and surrounded by a family that understands what those words truly mean. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. Have you ever had to set hard boundaries with family? What was your breaking point that became your breakthrough? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself and finding the courage to demand respect. Share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family, especially with family. Remember, your generosity should never cost you your self-respect, and it's never too late to reclaim your space, your peace, and your power. Thank you for being here, and may you find the strength to stand firm in your worth just as you are.